The outpost at the edge of the Orion Spur was not a place of wonder or beauty. It was a dusty settlement where freighters came to unload minerals and scavengers sold whatever broken machines they had found drifting in the dark. Among the clanging noise of tools and the constant smell of burnt metal lived Elias, a human mechanic. He was not a soldier nor a great explorer, but a man who knew how to make broken things work again. His small workshop was filled with scraps of starship engines, dented panels, and half-functioning tools. He repaired whatever was brought to him, and people trusted his hands because somehow he always found a way to fix things others had already given up on. It was late in the evening when the stranger walked in. The workshop doors slid open with a creak, and Elias looked up from the plasma torch in his hand. She wore a heavy cloak that hid her face and form, though her steps were unsteady as if she had traveled far. Across her back was a piece of armor unlike any Elias had ever seen, humming with faint sparks of energy. She placed it carefully on the workbench and spoke in a low voice that carried both command and weariness. "I need this repaired," she said. Her accent was strange, not belonging to any of the colonies Elias knew. He studied the armor. The plating was cracked, its inner circuits burned out in ways that made little sense. The energy core pulsed weakly, almost dead, and the design itself looked far older than anything in circulation. He frowned and tapped the side with a wrench. "This isn't standard make. What system did this come from?" She did not answer, only tightened her cloak around her shoulders. Her silence might have frustrated others, but Elias had long learned not to push customers with secrets. If someone wanted their story told, they would tell it. If not, he only had one duty: to fix what was broken. He nodded once and set his tools in order. The work was not easy. The parts inside the armor were unfamiliar, using alloys and circuit patterns that no human engineer would recognize. Yet Elias had patience. He replaced frayed wires with insulated cables meant for mining drills, carved replacement plates from scrap starship hulls, and adjusted the energy core by coupling it with a stabilizer normally used for small transport engines. Piece by piece, the dead armor began to breathe again with a steady hum. He was sweating by the time he stepped back, wiping his hands on a cloth. "It's not perfect," he said, "but it will hold. I don't know what this thing was built for, but it'll run." The woman moved closer, her cloak rustling softly. Her gloved hand touched the repaired plates, and the faint glow across the armor brightened. For the first time, Elias saw a small change in her posture. She stood straighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She looked at him from under the shadow of her hood, and though he could not see her eyes, he felt the intensity of her gaze. "You managed what no one else could," she murmured, almost to herself. Elias shrugged. "I just put things back together. That's what I do." She seemed about to say more, but instead she reached into her cloak and placed a small crystal on his workbench. It shone faintly like a captured star. "Payment," she said. "Keep it." Then she lifted the armor with surprising ease and strapped it back across her body. The hum deepened, as though awakening after a long sleep. When she left the workshop, Elias sat for a long moment staring at the crystal. It was unlike any currency he had seen, far too valuable to be handed over for a single repair. He shook his head, wondering who she really was. Strangers came and went often at the edge of the galaxy, but something about her lingered in his thoughts. The way she carried herself, the way the armor seemed almost alive when she touched it, it was not ordinary. Outside, the night deepened over the outpost. Elias closed his workshop and stored the crystal away, telling himself it was just another job, just another customer. But in his heart, he knew it was not true. Something had begun that night. Something far larger than a mechanic in a forgotten corner of space could imagine. He had repaired a piece of armor, yes, but he had also set in motion a story that would reach far beyond the dusty outpost and into the heart of the galaxy itself. The next day on the outpost began like many others. Ships came and went, carrying traders, miners, and wanderers. Elias worked at his bench, cleaning tools and adjusting a broken flight stabilizer. He tried to keep his thoughts on his tasks, but his mind kept drifting back to the mysterious woman. The way she had walked into his workshop, the strange armor, and the crystal she had left behind, none of it made sense. He told himself he should forget about it, yet he could not. The outpost was a place where secrets often passed through, but something about her felt heavier, as if her presence had carried the weight of hidden history. He pushed the thought aside, when the door to his workshop opened once more. It was her again. The same cloak covered her figure, though now the repaired armor was strapped firmly across her back. She did not speak at first, only stood near the door as if listening for unseen danger. Elias wiped his hands and raised an eyebrow. "Back, so soon?" he asked. She gave the faintest nod. "Your repair held. Better than I expected." Elias chuckled softly. "Good to know. Was worried it might give out if you leaned on it too hard." There was a moment of silence, and then she stepped closer. "I will stay here for a while. I have reasons." Elias frowned. Strangers sometimes lingered on the outpost, but they never gave reasons, and they never carried armor like hers. He wanted to ask more, but her guarded posture warned him not to. Instead, he gave a simple shrug. "Suit yourself. Just don't bring trouble to my shop." Her lips curved faintly at that, almost a smile, though it vanished as quickly as it came. She settled in the corner, silent, her presence quiet but sharp, like a blade hidden in shadow. By evening, the outpost grew, louder. A gang of pirates had landed, their ship painted with crude symbols, their laughter echoing across the settlement. The locals lowered their heads and avoided eye contact, for the pirates were known to bully and steal without care. Elias heard the noise as he locked up his workshop. He paid little attention until the pirates pushed into the square near his shop. They began shouting, demanding credits from vendors and breaking whatever they pleased. One of them kicked over a crate of fruit, scattering it across the ground. The people of the outpost obeyed in silence, unwilling to resist. Elias clenched his jaw, wishing for peace but knowing better than to fight men armed with blasters. The pirates turned their attention toward his workshop, eyes gleaming at the tools and equipment inside. "Nice place you got here," one of them sneered, stepping closer. "Might take a few things off your hands." Elias stood still, his hands at his sides. "It's just junk, nothing worth stealing." The pirate laughed and reached for the door, but before he could enter, a shadow moved between him and the workshop. The cloaked woman stepped forward, her repaired armor glowing faintly under the lights. She said nothing, yet the air around her grew heavy, commanding attention. The pirate blinked at her. "And who are you supposed to be?" She did not answer with words. Instead, she raised her arm, and the armor flared with energy. In one motion, faster than the eye could follow, she struck the blaster from his hand. Sparks flew as the weapon clattered to the ground. The other pirates froze, unsure of what they had just seen. Elias stared in shock. He had guessed she was skilled, but her speed and strength were beyond human. She moved with precision, every step balanced, every strike controlled. The pirates tried to fight back, yet each one fell swiftly, their weapons ripped away, or their bodies thrown to the ground. Within minutes, the square was silent again. The pirates scrambled to their feet and fled, shouting curses as they stumbled back toward their ship. Some muttered words Elias did not recognize, names whispered with fear. The bloodline. She still lives. The woman stood still, her cloak shifting as the glow of her armor dimmed once more. Elias looked at her, stunned. She turned toward him, her face still hidden, and said quietly, "Your repair saved me. Without it, the armor would have failed." Elias shook his head slowly. That wasn't just armor. That was, something more. She tilted her head as if considering whether to tell him more, but instead she said, "You should be careful. By helping me, you have drawn eyes you cannot see." Her words left Elias uneasy. He had only repaired broken gear, yet it seemed his work had carried weight far beyond what he understood. As night settled again over the outpost, whispers began to spread among the people. They spoke of the mysterious warrior who had defended them, of the armor that glowed with ancient power. Some looked at Elias with curiosity, wondering what connection he had to the stranger. Alone in his workshop, Elias sat staring at the crystal she had left him and thought of her warning. He had lived quietly for years, fixing machines and avoiding the larger conflicts of the galaxy. But deep inside he knew things had changed. He had stepped unknowingly into a story far greater than himself, and the woman he had helped, whoever she truly was at the very heart of it. The outpost was never a place where news traveled fast, but after the fight with the pirates, whispers spread like fire. Traders spoke of a cloaked warrior who moved like lightning, and locals repeated the story of armor glowing with strange power. No one dared to speak her name, for no one knew it, yet everyone felt that something important had happened. Elias, who had only repaired a piece of gear, found himself watched by curious eyes. Some asked him quietly who the woman was, but he could only shake his head and say he did not know. The woman stayed near his workshop. She rarely spoke, but she did not leave either. Sometimes she would sit in silence, her face hidden beneath her hood, her hands resting lightly on her knees as if she were waiting. Other times she would walk the outpost streets, calm yet alert, always scanning the sky as though expecting trouble. Elias tried not to disturb her, though his curiosity grew each day. One evening, as the suns dipped low and painted the horizon red, Elias found her standing outside the workshop, watching the sky. He approached carefully and said, "You know, people are talking about you. They're scared and curious at the same time. Who are you, really?" She did not look at him at first. Her eyes remained fixed on the horizon where a freighter was lifting into the air. After a long pause, she said, "It does not matter who I was. What matters is that I am not hidden anymore. The moment you repaired the armor, its signal woke. Others will know." Elias frowned. "Signal? What do you mean?" She turned to face him then, and though her hood still cast shadows over her features, he felt the weight of her gaze. "This armor is not just metal. It carries a mark of blood, a symbol of a house that once ruled the stars. For years I kept it broken silent so no one could find me. But you gave it life again." Elias blinked in confusion. "So, I made a mistake?" "No," she said softly. "You gave me back what I had lost. But now the galaxy will notice. Already, enemies will come. And allies too." Her words chilled him. He had thought himself a simple mechanic, far from the great struggles of empires and dynasties. Yet the way she spoke made him feel as if he had lit a beacon in the dark, one that could not be put out. Later that night, more traders arrived at the outpost, and Elias heard new rumors. They spoke of fleets moving in distant sectors, of strange signals detected across the stars. Some said an heir of the astral dynasties still lived, though most dismissed it as an old legend. The astral dynasties were names from history books, rulers who had once controlled 1,000 systems before vanishing in bloody wars. Few believed any of their bloodline survived, yet those who had seen the fight in the square now wondered if the legend had returned. Elias listened in silence, unease knotting in his chest. He did not believe in old tales, but he could not forget the speed of her movements, the way the pirates had fled in terror. The next day, a stranger arrived at the workshop. He was tall and dressed in fine robes, his eyes sharp and calculating. He carried no weapon, yet his presence drew attention. He introduced himself with a polite bow. "I am Envoy Koresh, traveler of the inner systems. May I ask if a woman in a cloak has passed through here?" Elias hesitated, knowing full well the woman was sitting just inside the workshop. "A lot of cloaked people come through here," he said carefully. The envoy smiled faintly, as if he expected the answer. "This one is special. There are many who would like to know where she walks. Some would pay greatly for such knowledge." His gaze hardened, and his voice lowered. "And some would kill for it." Before Elias could respond, the woman stepped out from the shadows. She faced the envoy directly, her hood still hiding her features, but her voice was clear. "Tell your masters I am not hiding anymore. If they want me, they will find me standing." The envoy stiffened, then bowed again. "So it is true. The blood still flows. The galaxy will not remain quiet. Not now. Without another word, he turned and left, his robes trailing behind him. Elias stared after him, then looked at the woman. What did he mean? Who are these masters he talked about? She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "They are the hunters. For years they searched for the last of my line to end it forever. They believed me dead. Now they will know otherwise." Elias felt a shiver crawl up his spine. The pirates had been dangerous enough, but this was something far greater. He rubbed the back of his neck and muttered, "I just fixed some armor. I didn't sign up for this." Her head turned slightly, and though he could not see her face, he felt her eyes on him. "You gave me back my strength when I was nothing. That act ties you to this path, whether you wished it or not." He wanted to protest, to say he was only a mechanic, that he had no place in dynasties or wars. But deep down, he knew she was right. The galaxy had shifted the moment he touched her armor, and no matter how much he longed for the quiet life of broken machines and simple repairs, that life was already gone. That night, Elias could not sleep. He lay awake in his small quarters, listening to the faint hum of ships coming and going. In his mind, he replayed the envoy's words, the whispers of dynasties, and the woman's calm certainty. Somewhere in the vast darkness above, fleets were moving, drawn by a signal he had unknowingly reignited. The galaxy was beginning to stir, and soon it would come knocking at their door. The outpost lay quiet under the pale glow of distant suns, but Elias felt no peace. Days passed after the envoy's visit, yet tension grew heavier in the air. More strangers began to arrive, mercenaries, merchants, travelers who looked twice at every shadow. Elias could see the change in their eyes. They were not here for trade. They were here for her. The woman, still cloaked, remained calm. She trained outside the workshop at dawn, moving in patterns that looked almost like a dance. The repaired armor shimmered faintly as she struck the air with speed and precision, blades of light flashing in her hands. Elias often watched her, trying to understand who she truly was. She carried herself with a grace he had never seen before, but there was always a weight behind her movements, as if every strike came from years of loss and exile. One morning, as Elias tightened bolts on a transport engine, she spoke quietly from behind him. "They will come soon. You should be ready." He turned, frowning. "Ready for what? I'm a mechanic, not a fighter." Her hood tilted slightly, her voice calm. "But you are human. That means you find ways to survive even when you are not trained. I have seen it." Elias gave a small laugh without humor. "Survive? Maybe. But against fleets? Against hunters? That's not survival, that's madness." She did not argue. Instead, she looked to the horizon where thin clouds stretched across the pale sky. "When the fleets arrive, you will understand." Later that day, the sky burned with fire. Dozens of ships pierced the atmosphere, their black hulls marked with the insignia of a powerful syndicate. The people of the outpost panicked, rushing to hide in homes and storage bunkers. Alarms wailed as the ships descended, filling the air with thunder. Elias stood frozen at the edge of the square, his heart pounding. This was no small raid. This was an invasion. The lead ship opened its bay doors, and a column of armored soldiers marched out, their weapons gleaming. They moved, with brutal discipline, spreading across the outpost like a tide. At their center stood a tall figure in silver armor, his voice echoing across the settlement through a translator. "By order of the syndicate, surrender the heir of the astral dynasties. If you resist, this outpost will be destroyed." Elias felt his throat tighten. Around him, people trembled, whispering of the legend come alive. No one dared to speak. No one dared to move. The soldiers leveled their weapons, and the silence stretched heavy and unbearable. Then, the woman stepped forward. Her cloak shifted, revealing the faint glow of her armor. The soldiers froze, recognizing what she wore. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she removed her hood for the first time. Her face was young yet strong, her eyes burning with quiet fire. For the first time, Elias saw her fully revealed, and he understood why people whispered of royalty. "Theses." Commander in silver armor raised his blade. "So it is true, the blood still lives." His voice carried both awe and hatred. "Then you will die here, last of your line." She did not flinch. Instead, her armor blazed brighter, and she raised, her voice so all could hear. "I will not run, I will not hide. If you want me, then face me." The square erupted in chaos. Soldiers rushed forward, weapons firing bolts of energy. The woman moved like a storm, deflecting blasts with her glowing blades, striking down attackers with swift, decisive blows. The crowd scattered in panic, but Elias stood frozen, caught between fear and wonder. She was not merely fighting. She was holding back an entire army by herself. But she could not hold forever. More soldiers poured from the ships, surrounding her from every side. Elias's instincts screamed at him to run, yet another part of him, some stubborn human part, told him he could not leave her alone. He raced back into his workshop, heart hammering, and grabbed whatever he could find. Mining stabilizers, engine coils, pressure charges, scraps of machinery, yes. But he had always known how to make broken things work again. In minutes, he had set traps across the square. Stabilizers overloaded and exploded in bursts of light, blinding soldiers. Coils sent arcs of electricity crawling across the ground, forcing the invaders back. Pressure charges detonated near their ranks, breaking their lines. Elias shouted to the locals hiding in their homes, "Now! Block the alleys! Push them back!" To his surprise, they listened. Armed with tools, pipes, and raw courage, the outpost folk joined in, striking from shadows and rooftops. The tide shifted, and the soldiers stumbled, caught between the woman's fury and Elias's improvised chaos. At last, the commander himself stepped forward, furious. He charged at the woman, his silver blade crackling with energy. Their clash shook the square, light against light, sparks flying with every strike. She fought with precision, but the commander was strong, his armor heavy with power. For a moment Elias feared she would fall. But then, the armor he had repaired flared with renewed strength, its core pulsing steady. She struck once, twice, then with a final cry, drove her blade through the commander's chest. His armor shattered and he collapsed silent. The remaining soldiers, stunned, retreated toward their ships. In minutes the fleet pulled away, leaving smoke and silence behind. The people of the outpost emerged slowly, their eyes wide with awe. Some knelt. Others whispered her name, though most did not yet know it. Elias stood at her side, breathing hard, covered in sweat and soot from his makeshift traps. She looked at him with steady eyes and said, "You stood when others would have run. That is why we won." Elias shook his head, his voice hoarse. "I'm not a fighter. I just did what I could." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "That is what matters. You are human. You make do with what you have. And that is why even empires should fear you." As the smoke drifted into the sky, Elias realized her words carried truth. He had thought himself small, powerless, a mechanic at the edge of nowhere. Yet his hands had turned junk into weapons, and his courage had tipped the battle. The galaxies, storms were closing in. But now he knew he was already a part of them. The smoke had faded, but the memory of battle stayed in the air like a heavy shadow. The people of the outpost walked carefully through the square, stepping around broken armor and shattered stone. Some still held pipes and tools in their hands. They looked at the woman and at Elias with new eyes, eyes that now carried both respect and fear. For the first time since she had arrived, the woman removed her cloak entirely. Her face was no longer hidden. She stood tall and calm, her dark hair falling past her shoulders, her eyes bright like starlight. She did not speak, but her presence alone silenced the square. Elias stood beside her, his hands still blackened with soot and grease. He looked at the people and gave a tired smile. It's over, they're gone. But deep down, he knew it was not truly over. This was only the beginning. Later that night, the outpost held a quiet gathering. Not a celebration, no music, no lights, but a circle of voices sharing what they had seen. Old men spoke of legends, of a royal house thought long dead. Traitors whispered of a war that might return. And through it all, eyes turned again and again to the woman who had fought like a queen of old. Elias sat near the edge of the circle, listening. He did not speak much, but he watched her closely. She sat straight, calm, her eyes on the fire in the center. An elder woman finally asked the question no one else dared. "What is your name, child?" For a long moment, the woman was silent. Then she said in a clear voice, "My name is Serenia Viel. I am the last of the astral bloodline." Gasps filled the air. Some bowed their heads. Some stared in disbelief. "The astral bloodline?" a man whispered. "They ruled the core worlds, before the fall, before the Great War." "Yes," Serenia said, "and because of that, many have tried to erase us. But I survived." Her eyes turned briefly to Elias. "I survived because someone repaired what I could not. Because a human gave me back my strength." Elias felt the weight of every gaze. He shifted uncomfortably, not used to such attention. "I only fixed the armor," he muttered. Serenia smiled faintly. "You did more than that. You made a choice to help without asking who I was. That choice may change the stars." The elder woman nodded slowly. "If what you say is true, child, then the galaxy will not rest. They will come again, and not just pirates or syndicates. Others will come, those who fear your return and those who wish to use you." Serenia's voice was steady. "I know. That is why I must leave. If I stay, this outpost will be destroyed." Elias's head snapped up. "Leave? After everything we did to protect you?" She turned to him gently. "That is why I must go. Because you protected me. I cannot let you pay the price for my name." Elias opened his mouth to argue. But no, words came. He understood, even if he hated it. She was not just a traveler anymore. She was a storm in the shape of a woman, and the galaxy would not stop hunting her. The next morning, Serenia prepared to leave. She stood outside the workshop, fastening her armor, checking the power core Elias had repaired. He came to her side, holding a small device in his hand. "It's a beacon," he said. "Short range. Only works within one system. If you need help, send the signal. I'll hear it." She looked at the device and took it carefully. "Thank you. But you should not follow me. It will be dangerous." He gave a dry laugh. "Everything's already dangerous. Might as well be useful." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "If the day comes, I will call." She turned and walked toward a small transport ship waiting at the edge of the outpost. People gathered to watch her leave. Some bowed, some placed hands over their hearts. She did not wave or smile, but she gave a deep nod before stepping into the ship. The engines roared, and within moments, she was gone, vanishing into the sky, leaving only silence behind. Elias stood there long after the ship disappeared. His heart felt heavy. He did not know where she would go or what dangers waited ahead. But he knew this was not the end. It was only a pause. The galaxy had seen her now, and it would remember. In the days that followed, life at the outpost returned, slowly. People repaired buildings, cleaned the square, and whispered about the battle. They looked at Elias differently now. Some came to thank him. Others asked if Serenia would return. He always gave the same answer. "I don't know, but if she does, we'll be ready." At night, he sat in his workshop and stared at the small crystal she had first left him. It glowed softly in the dark. He did not understand its full meaning, but he knew it was more than payment. It was a promise. Some nights he dreamed of stars falling and empires kneeling. In his dreams, Serenia stood tall in shining armor, her voice echoing through the void. And beside her, he saw himself, not a king, not a soldier, but a human who had once repaired a piece of broken gear, and in doing so changed the course of the galaxy. He would wait. He would work. and when the beacon called, he would be ready. The weeks after the crystal was repaired were filled with restless energy. The outpost was no longer the quiet, forgotten place it had once been. Soldiers who had fled in fear of Serenya's power carried tales to every corner of space. Whispers spread from trader to trader, from station to station, of a hidden princess who had returned, of a warrior who fought with blades of light, of a symbol that could not be silenced. The council worried more with every passing day. They knew the empires would not ignore these rumors. They would come, and not with a single fleet this time. They would come with fire and with numbers that no small outpost could withstand. Elias worked harder than ever. His workshop became the heart of preparation. Old ships were dragged from storage, their engines worn down by years of neglect. Elias fixed them one by one, teaching others as he went, showing them how to seal cracked fuel lines, how to rewire fried circuits, how to weld armor plates strong enough to take a blast. His hands were always stained with oil, his voice hoarse from giving orders, but his eyes never lost focus. Serenya trained the people too. She taught them not only how to fight, but how to stand together. Farmers learned to hold rifles steady. Traders learned how to move supplies quickly. Even children carried messages between groups, their small feet darting through alleys faster than any adult. The outpost, once a place of fear, slowly began to move like one living body, united by a cause greater than survival. One evening, Elias and Serenya stood on the roof of the workshop watching the stars. The night was clear, the horizon lit by the glow of distant nebulae. Serenya's armor shone faintly, powered by the crystal Elias had repaired. "They are coming," she said quietly, as if the stars themselves had told her. Elias nodded. "Then, we'll be ready." She turned to look at him. "You speak as if you have always been a warrior. Yet when I met you, you were only a man fixing broken things." He smiled faintly. "I'm still just a man fixing broken things. Only now the things are bigger. The stakes are bigger." Her expression softened, a rare glimpse behind the steel of her voice. "You do not see yourself clearly, Elias. You gave me the strength to rise again. And when the galaxy kneels, it will not be because of me alone. It will be because of us." The moment passed quietly between them, unspoken, yet heavy with meaning. Days later, the first signs appeared. Long-range sensors picked up movements at the edge of the system, fleets gathering, signals hidden but not enough to escape notice. The council panicked, demanding Serenya leave before the storm arrived. But Serenya refused. "If I run," she told them, "the flames will only follow. If I stand, there is a chance to turn the tide." The outpost braced itself. Walls were reinforced with thick plating. Weapons were mounted on rooftops. Civilians were moved into shelters beneath the ground. Elias stood at the heart of it all, directing crews, checking every engine and every gun. His hands trembled at times, but not from fear, only from the weight of knowing that everything depended on holding together just long enough. On the eve of the attack, Serenya gathered the people in the square. Torches lit the faces of farmers, traders, children, and elders. The silence was thick with dread. Serenya stepped forward, her armor glowing brighter than the fire around them. "You fear what is coming," she said, her voice steady and strong. "I do not ask you to lose that fear. Fear reminds us we are alive. But I ask you to let courage stand beside it. You are not only farmers, you are not only traders. Tonight, you are the voice of this outpost, and together, that voice will not be silenced." The crowd erupted with a cheer, not loud enough to drown out the sound of their fear, but strong enough to bind them together. Later, Elias found himself back in the workshop, tightening bolts on a ship's hull. Serenya entered quietly, standing near the door. "You should rest," she said. He shook his head. "Not until everything is ready." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she placed a hand on the ship, her eyes on him. "You remind me of my father. He never stopped working for his people. Even when the empire burned, he believed in hope. And now, I see the same in you." Elias felt the words settle deep in his chest. He did not know what to say, so he only kept working. The night ended with a terrible sound, the sharp blare of alarms. Ships appeared in the skies above, dark shapes blotting out the stars. The invasion had begun. Elias rushed outside as the people took their positions. Sirenia stood at the front, her blades gleaming, the repaired crystal shining brighter than ever. For a heartbeat, Elias felt the world stop. She looked like more than a warrior. She looked like destiny itself. And when the first enemy ships descended, through the clouds the outpost did not hide. It rose to meet them. The skies shook with fire. Enemy ships poured down like a storm, their engines roaring, their weapons bright against the night. The outpost, once silent and forgotten, now stood as the front line of resistance. Cannons mounted on rooftops answered, with bursts of flame. Shields shimmered as they absorbed the first wave of strikes. The ground trembled, but the people did not scatter. Elias ran from position to position, shouting orders, making sure no weapon fell silent. Sparks flew across his face as a cannon overheated, but he kept working, sealing cables, cooling circuits, forcing machines to last just a little longer. Every moment mattered. Every second they held back, the enemy gave them another breath of hope. Sirenia stood at the heart of the defense. Her armor glowed with the light of the repaired crystal, each step she took leaving a faint shimmer in the dust. Her twin blades cut through the air, striking with precision. Where she moved, the enemy faltered. Soldiers who had once believed her gone now saw her alive, and the fear in their eyes was stronger than any weapon. The council had hidden in their chambers, but the people looked to her. Children peeked from shelters to glimpse the figure shining against the fire. Farmers, with hands calloused from soil rather than battle, shouted her name as they fired their rifles. She was no longer only a princess, she was their shield. The enemy pressed harder. Dropships landed outside the walls, spilling troops into the streets. The clash of metal on stone echoed through the outpost. Elias grabbed a rifle, though his aim was clumsy. He fired to protect those repairing beside him, and when the rifle jammed, he used his tools to strike at enemies who got too close. His hands, once meant only to fix, now defended lives. Sirenia found him in the chaos. Her blades cut down soldiers who charged toward him, her voice sharp. "Stay back. You are no fighter." Elias shook his head, breathing hard. "Neither were they," he said, pointing at the people fighting in the streets. "But they fight. Because they must, so will I." For a moment she looked at him, and there was no time for argument. She turned back to the battle, but a new strength burned in her movements. Hours passed, like minutes. The outpost held, but the sky grew darker, with more enemy ships arriving. It seemed endless. Then, in the midst of the fight, the enemy commander descended, a towering figure in armor black as the void. His voice carried across the battlefield. "Lay down your arms," he thundered. "The princess belongs to us. You cannot win." The people faltered. Their weapons shook. Even the bravest among them felt despair. But Sirenia stepped forward, blades crossed before her chest. Her voice rose above the noise. "I do not belong to you. I do not belong to any empire. I belong to the people who still believe in hope." The crystal on her armor flared brighter than the stars above. A wave of light spread across the outpost, pushing back the shadows. For the first time, the enemy soldiers hesitated. Some dropped their weapons. Others stared in disbelief. The commander roared and charged. His blade crashed against Sirenia's, the impact ringing like thunder. The duel shook the ground. Sparks flew with every strike. Elias watched, his heart pounding, wishing he could do more than stand at the edge. The people gathered, their eyes fixed on the fight, and when Sirenia's blade finally cut through the commander's armor, when he fell to the ground with a final cry, the silence that followed was heavier than the battle itself. Then came the sound. Cheers rising, louder and louder, until it filled the night. The enemy ships began to retreat. Their soldiers, leaderless and shaken, fled into the sky. The storm that had descended upon the outpost lifted, leaving smoke and ruin, but also victory. Sirenia stood tall in the square, her armor shining, her face calm though her body bore the marks of battle. The people knelt before her, not out of fear, but out of respect. One by one, voices spoke her name until it became a chant that echoed through the ruins. Elias stepped forward, tired, covered in dust and soot, but unable to stop smiling. "They follow you now," he said softly. She turned to him. "No, Elias. They follow us. Without you, I would still be broken. Without your hands, the crystal would still be dark. You gave them the light." He shook his head. "I only repaired what was already there." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "And in doing so, you reminded the galaxy that light can return even after darkness." News of the victory spread faster than the enemy retreat. Traders carried the story, soldiers whispered it to their commanders, and soon every world heard of the outpost that stood against an empire. They spoke of a princess who returned with blades of fire, and of a human who gave her back her strength. Across the stars, hearts stirred, some in secret, some openly. They began to rise, and when Serenia stepped forward, the galaxy, tired of its chains, began to kneel, not in surrender, but in respect, in hope, in belief. The forgotten outpost became a symbol. The woman who had once been hunted became a leader. And the man who once only repaired machines became a name carried in every song of freedom. Together they had changed the course of history, and when Serenia stood revealed, the galaxy bowed.